Hi, Irina. This is Gene Ligman. I work with TechSource Systems. You sent us an inquiry, an email full of questions in response to our quote. And I thought I would just make a quick video for you to help answer a bunch of these questions. I can communicate a lot more information on video than I can by simply typing out some answers on a email to you. So I just wanted to show you through some things about the TechSource unit, some key advantages, because that's part of what you wanted to know. And okay, so we'll get started. Okay, let's talk about some things that are similar. So the different, of course, we're talking about the differences between the Parker 10R. I think it's called the Parker 10R. So what the R stands for is for extra refrigeration capacity. They used to skimp on the refrigeration until I called them to task a number of years ago in front of their customers because they were under-speccing their refrigeration. So they have the Parker 10R now, which has more refrigeration in it. And it's good enough, right? It's a good machine. What is similar to the TechSource unit is that it has a rectangular chamber. Oh, by the way, there's really only two American producers of any quality, so you've got the two that you should be considering. Rectilinear chamber, right? So it's a kind of squarish. This chamber will fit 10 of these carts, same as the Parker 10 cart. The condensing plates, this is where your ice accumulates as the product dries. The water is driven out of the product in your shelves and it accumulates in the ice. If you watched any of my videos on YouTube, you know that 98, 99% of the water that comes out of your product ends up in that ice. So the performance of these ice condensing plates is critical for a freeze dryer. Both the Parker system and the TechSource system have enough ice carrying capacity and enough condensing square footage to handle the amount of water that comes out of there just fine. The other thing that's similar between the Parker system and the TechSource system is this rectilinear, this upright square cart, right? A rolling cart that's got all these shelves in it, and the shelves, each one of these shelves is a heater, which you can see kind of over here. These heaters each run between 135 and 180 watts, depending on what voltage you put in. And you would put your trays with your product, you'd slide them in on these shelves. Now, in the Parker system, these carts have fixed shelves, so you cannot remove them. You cannot change their configuration. It's very difficult to change the heater. Say one fails, and they do. We've heard plenty of complaints from customers about shelves that fail. So if you have failed heaters in a Parker system, you have to basically take the cart apart and repair it, and it takes you a day or two. So it can be done. In the TechSource unit, to replace one of these heaters, it takes minutes to accomplish. I might have a video that I can show you real quick how that works.
Changing a heater in the TechSource Systems commercial freeze dryer.
So to put a new heater into this cart, all you do is just basically push it in. It automatically makes electrical contact to the shelf from the back of the cart. There's a receptacle, kind of like a copper receptacle that fits into, and it transfers the power directly onto the shelf. So to remove the heater, all you do is pull it out. To put a new heater in, should you need to, you just push it in. Why would you take these heaters out? If one fails, it does happen from time to time on all heaters, right? Things break. You might need to replace it. If you need to clean it, you can just pull out all these shelves, wipe them down with a cloth, and put them back in. It'll probably take you 10-15 minutes to do an entire cart because there's 48 shelves to do in each cart, but you can do it. So these carts are cleanable. While all the shelves are out, you can access every internal surface of this cart to clean it. You can pressure wash it with a sanitizing fluid of your choice. It is the only one in the world that has removable shelves like this. So it is the only one in the world that you can easily get to and clean every single surface without too much trouble. That is a major feature of the TechSource technology. That's one of their patents. Here you can see the cart a little closer up. You can see some of the shelves are just kind of hanging out. You'll notice also that this cart has very open architecture. When the product exudes its moisture from the product, because you're drying it, it goes out into the chamber. It has to be able to flow out into the chamber easily. This is another difference between the TechSource Systems unit and the Parker unit, because the Parker unit is a closed cabinet cart, which you can see in this picture. So this is a Parker cart. This, by the way, this cart is the number one thing that clients that we've spoken to have trouble with in the Parker unit. Parker makes a good freeze dryer. Their weakness is really the cart. Again, it's fixed shelves, but you'll notice that it's a closed cart. They say that this is an advantage because the cart holds its heat in so it can dry better. That just drives you closer to melting. It degrades the product quality. You get densification, you get shriveling, you get discoloration, you get stickiness. It really degrades the actual quality of the product coming out. And it also only has the capacity to hold 43 trays, whereas the TechSource unit will hold 47. That's a difference of 12% total production per batch. Now, over the course of a year, that is an enormous amount of extra production that you get out of a TechSource system instead of a Parker system. I think it might actually be a little bit more than that even, because Parker says you can put about 2,500 pounds in their system. The TechSource system has been tested with 3,000 pounds, sometimes even up to 4,000 pounds, depending on how long you want to let it run. If you want it to be a 24-hour period, 3,000, 3,200 pounds is probably about your limit, but the Parker system is spec'd at being about 2,500 pounds. And part of the reason is because of this closed cart. If you make too much water vapor, it just can't get out through these little louvers and holes. It creates higher pressure inside the cart, and that drives your temperature up of your product overall, and you get closer to melting the ice inside of your product instead of drying it while it is still frozen. Both systems, both the Parker and the TechSource unit, are going to have a Leibold dry pump, right? This is a dry screw pump. This is literally the best vacuum pump you can use in the world for this application for a couple of different reasons. One is it's air cooled. A second one is that you can actually remove the pump casing to get at the screws to clean them if you need to. And a third reason is because it's all aluminum. In a really moisture heavy environment like freeze drying, if you have a pump, let's say you lose power in the middle of a process run and you have a great deal of moisture inside your pump, if the pump is made out of cast iron, which almost all vacuum pumps are, all dry pumps, you will have rusting happen, and it happens pretty quickly. That does not happen in an aluminum pump. Furthermore, this pump runs cooler, which is better for freeze drying because you will pull some sugars, some fats, some lipids, some fatty acids out of the product and into the pump. Some of that will coat onto these screws here. These run at about 7,000 RPM. There's no oil in this vacuum pump because the tolerances are very tight. And the rotors spin fast, so it sweeps gas from the inlet into the outlet. This is the outlet side you're looking at here. And that's what creates vacuum. So because it runs cooler, it's not going to bake on any of those stickies. The sugars, the fats, the lipids, fatty acids, that sort of thing that get coated on these rotors like a dust. It won't pyrolyze on. It won't create carbon deposits, which eventually will cause your pump to become unbalanced or even seize. So if you have cast iron pumps, even dry screw pumps, you can have seizures and other things that can happen that is a lot easier to take care of with a Leibold pump. Both the Parker and the TechSource units use the Leibold pumps. Another difference is the type of refrigeration. So TechSource Systems has outdoor chillers, which will chill a reservoir of liquid that's very cold to minus 40 C or lower. That liquid will then be pumped with a standard mechanical fluid pump to and from your chamber, which goes through the walls, right? So in the Parker system, you have direct Freon expansion inside the chamber, inside those condenser plates. If you have any leaks, Freon leaks in there, that causes any number of problems. One is it makes it very difficult to achieve the vacuum that you need to get to in order to start your process. Another one is that it's very expensive, and you have a lot more area that you can get those leaks in when you have the Freon going into your chamber as direct expansion. So in the TechSource unit, there's a Freon circulating system inside this cabinet. It's just cooling a little reservoir that's hidden inside this side. And again, that's an insulated reservoir. You have a pump that just pumps that cold fluid to and from your chamber. Now, one of the big benefits that you get from that cold fluid as opposed to having direct expansion is when you go to do defrost, you can heat up that liquid. You can heat it up actually quite quickly. As a result, we have some customers who have the ice fall off of their ice platens, these things right here, right? So when you start warming these up, the ice will crack off and fall off onto the floor so that you can get it out of the chamber. We have some customers who say it takes 10 minutes to get that ice to start falling on the floor. The Parker system can take 2.5, 3 hours, sometimes 4. So that is a major, major difference in how much production you can get in a unit in a day, because those several hours defrosting matter a lot. The beauty of using these rectangular upright chambers is that you can nest them together on a fairly low footprint, right? So your chillers will always go outdoors, right? So you have to have concrete pads, and you have to have a separate power supply for your chiller outside. So this is your exterior wall in your facility. The chilling lines then go through the wall, usually up over the ceiling and down, come down to the back of the unit. This is where the cold liquid goes into the condenser plates in the back. And you can see that you can stack these units in pretty tight, right? So in an area that's about 30 feet wide and 30 feet deep, you can get 4 units. Each one of these units, again, can do about 3,000 pounds. That's in the range of 1,500 kilograms. So, in this 30 by 30 square foot area with the chillers outdoor, they take more room, but inside your actual facility, a 30 by 30 square foot area, you can get 1,500, 3,000, 4,500, 6,000 kilograms of production in a day. And of course, you're not limited to having 4 units, but each one of these units here will do about 1,500 kilograms. You need to leave, of course, some room behind the unit to put your vacuum pump set, but that's pretty easy to do. Another key feature of the TechSource system unit is that the PLC, the primary logic controller, is open source. It's meaning that when you buy a unit from us, you get the keys to the car, right? You now have the ability to modify this controller as you see fit. We don't have any passwords protecting it. If you want to reprogram it, we recommend that you contact us. And if it's something simple, we'll just make the change. If you need an entire change in the software because you have a special circumstance that you want to account for, you want to operate your system in your own special way, then we just put you in contact with our programmer, and whatever the however many hours that takes just becomes a charge. But for most, we only have one customer that's ever wanted to do that because he wanted to modify significantly how the freeze dryer runs. So we ended up actually refunding him his money because we liked his changes, and so in exchange for upgrading our own controller with his software change, we just refunded his money for it. This PLC has a small control screen on it. It's a little touch screen, so you can operate the system there if you want. Most of the control functions are done on a web page. So there's a connection to the network here. It's a hardwire connection so that there's no security issues. You don't need a wireless router. If you don't have a hardwire connection, you can get a router or a mesh net node and run the cable from that wireless router down to your system. Every single control function in here is done via web page. This means that you can control it from any device in your network, that be a phone, that maybe that's a tablet or a PC on your desk. You can monitor it and control it from many locations all at once if you want. You can also make on-the-fly changes to the program. So let's say there's a parameter you want to modify. Let's say instead of some temperature and some amount of time that's in this process recipe here, you want to run it extra time or go a little higher temperature, you can just type it in and hit enter and it will automatically make that change. Now that won't make the change in the saved recipe. That will only change it for that run. So if you want to save it in a recipe, you actually have to go and modify the recipe, and you can do that. This is the build recipe function. So as soon as you make a new recipe by simply filling in these numbers, and I help with that, right? This is one of the things that I do with customers all the time is I help them make and modify recipes for their different products. And you mentioned, hey, can we have a different recipe for each type of fruit? The answer is yes. Sometimes it won't matter. Sometimes it will. If you want to change to do other foods, let's say you want to do rations for your troops in the field so that they can actually have food to eat, that they don't have to rely on, that A is really light, they don't need refrigeration, they don't need hot water, whatever. You can do meals. You can modify your process recipe here to do whatever you want, and I'll help you with that. I help people with that all the time. We'll just get on a Zoom call and we'll go over the data with you to make the modifications that you want. The control screen shows you pressure and temperatures and heater powers and that sort of stuff. It's actually very easy to monitor and operate this system. And again, it's all by web page. So if you want to monitor it from somewhere else other than on your local area network, you'd need to use a VPN connection, dial in, and then you can connect to your unit. We don't recommend that you leave it just unsecured because that's just a security vulnerability. But if you use a VPN connection, that'll be fine. You will need actually two different power sources. So one is going to be out at the chiller. So this is rated in horsepower. 90 horsepower is I think about 60 kW. So the chiller is going to need its own 480 volts, three-phase power. I don't think the 50 hertz is going to make any difference. 50, 60 hertz, it should be fine because it's a Bitzer compressor that's built in Europe. Should run fine on 50 hertz, no problem. Just run a little slower. You'll need, about 200 amp service for your chiller, and you need another. Basically 300 amps indoors, 250 at 208 for running the heaters that are inside the chamber. Remember all those racks that have the heaters? Yeah, that's a lot of amps, but that's how many heaters you have in there. And then you'll need a 480 volt power supply for the vacuum pump set. So it's not going to actually draw this many amps while it's running, but you need to spec this in so that when you size your breakers, your electrician can size the breakers properly so that you're not going to have any nuisance trips. The system does require some compressed air. The compressed air is to purge the seals on the vacuum pump to keep the seals from getting contaminated either by the stuff that's inside the vacuum pump or the atmosphere that's outside the vacuum pump. And there's also some air-operated vacuum valves that will need some air pressure to operate. The unit weighs about 20,000 pounds. That's the chamber. The chiller weight is, I think, at a rate of 7,000 pounds. And we will get a shipping, we've done shipping estimates to Europe before for a customer that was in France. They didn't order. They were a cannabis processing company that never really got their operation up and running. But we do have the data from that shipping estimate. We can use that. A typical chamber is going to be about 21, 22 feet long. 240 inches would be 20 feet. So I guess it's a little bit more than 20 feet long. It's about 8 feet tall and 5 feet wide. So in meters, sorry, I don't really know. I'd have to make an estimate, but I don't want to do that here. I could probably get you the data separately if necessary, but I don't have that on hand for this recording. Something that I did not mention before is that the chamber is all 304 stainless. This loading ramp is aluminum, which makes it lighter, easier to swing up and down. The carts are made out of aluminum. These are all food grade aluminum. The typical trays that we will supply with the unit, if you order, well, it's an option because trays, you can buy them from anywhere. They're just standard size baking trays. If you get them from us, they're the open lip type, which means that you don't have any place for pathogens to get trapped in the, because a lot of trays will have this wire that is captured inside of the lip, and the lip is closed, and that's a pathogen trap. And also, you can get rusty water that leaks out of there when you wash the trays. So we sell ones that are open lip, so it only curls over like this. So I say this is the tray bottom, and it comes up and it curls over. It's heavier gauge aluminum, so they last longer and they're stiffer, but they're more expensive. So anyway, those kind of things are, I think I even put them on the quote for you. They're really nice to have. So those are aluminum. You can get stainless if you need to. They're just more expensive. But they're food grade aluminum. I mean, there's a lot of food that's stored for a very long time in aluminum. It's perfectly safe. So if that's the thing, right? If it's just food safe, then aluminum is really a good thing. These platens, these cold platens, are made out of aluminum. That is a good thing because aluminum has a much higher heat transfer capacity than stainless steel. So most of the chamber's interior is stainless steel with aluminum condenser plates, aluminum racks, and the trays that you put your food on are made out of aluminum. One thing that you get with the TechSource unit that you won't get with any other commercial freeze dryer is you get data logging of a particular parameter that happens inside your freeze dryer. So this is a chart of data from a freeze dryer that was running with chicken liver. It's not going to be that much different for fruit. It'll be a little bit different, but the machine logs the pertinent data, the heaters, the power, the temperature, the pressure in the chamber, the chiller temperature, some other things every minute while you're running for hours, however many hours that is. One of the data points that you get from the TechSource unit that you, for some reason, don't get from other freeze dryers is the heater power in percent of full power. This is one of your most important parameters to know where you are in your drying process. And that is because as you dry the ice out of your product, the amount of heat that it requires to keep that shelf warm is diminished because you're getting less and less water and the vaporization rate is dropping. So as your product vaporizes as water, it creates this cold wind that blows on the shelf, and that shelf then has to be heated. This line here is your heater set point and your actual heater temperature. You see they track right one over the other. The orange line is your set point. The purple and blue line, which you can barely see, are the actual temperature. These are the parameters that you will actually be modifying as part of your process recipe development, is the temperature profile that you run through. These slow ramps are far superior to having jagged, where you bump it up and then you wait for a while and you bump it up again and then you bump it down. The more you can smooth out this power curve, the better. But knowing where this power curve is, when it gets down to a certain point and it starts to flatten out, you know you're done. There's a lot of mystery and uncertainty in the freeze drying business as to when is the machine actually done with the product, and that is actually not that hard to tell if you have the right data points. TechSource is pretty much the only company that makes a machine that's got this data point. This is what I do, by the way. So if you buy a machine from TechSource, you get me for free. I probably know as much or more about freeze drying equipment, the science behind freeze drying, the engineering, the business than maybe anyone else in North America. There's some good folks in Europe that know a thing or two, but you get me to help you do things like modify your recipes and take a look and see. And if you have any issues, I can help you also. So this is something that you get with the TechSource unit that you will not get anywhere else. Now, Parker has a policy that after you buy their machine, if you need help like that, then you have to pay by the hour. Even if you just want to call them on the phone, that's not how we work. That's not how we work. You know, call me on the phone and talk to me about how to make your machine run better. Just call me on the phone, or we'll do a FaceTime. We'll do a Google Meet. We'll do a Teams meeting. Whatever you want to do. We'll make our schedules mesh. I think you're about 8 hours ahead of me, so we can make it work. So I'm going to send you this email that's got all this information here. This is something that I did for a different customer here in the United States who wanted to know, hey, why would I buy a TechSource unit as opposed to the Parker 10 when the Parker 10 costs me less money up front? And the answer is because it doesn't really cost you less money up front, or at least not after you start to take into account the amount of product that you can get out of a unit, right? So, for example, if you look at these little spreadsheets here, you can see a direct comparison of how much production you can get out of a TechSource unit versus a Parker unit. This is just based on that 12% difference in production. And we're talking about, in the range of, if it was US dollars in the United States, assuming $2 per pound per wet pound processing as your value add, about $200,000 just in the first year. Just for extra production, because you get that much more extra into each batch because the carts are bigger. But that's not all, right? If you also take into account the fact that the unit will melt off much faster, right? Where the TechSource unit takes 10 to 15 minutes as opposed to 2 hours, 2.5 hours, you'll get a great deal of extra value out of that as well. If you add it all up, you get an extra about $435,000 worth of production in the first year. Well, if you take the TechSource unit and you subtract off this $435,000 of extra production, and that's not just revenue here. We're talking about actual profit, operating profit, because this is just a surcharge of value add that you put on your product. It doesn't take into account, or it already accounts for the cost of product. This extra $435,000, if you subtract that from the TechSource price, you get a price that is actually cheaper than the Parker unit. And that's just the first year. Every year after that, you get it again and again and again. So you see, the TechSource unit is a much better unit. It's easier to maintain. It's easier to clean. It's easier to put the carts in and out. The chamber maintains its vacuum tightness. For example, this seal that's on the front door here is actually just an O-ring on the TechSource Systems units. You can pull this O-ring out and change it, and it takes you less than 2 minutes, perhaps, maybe 10 minutes if you're really clumsy. If you have the door seal on a Parker unit fail, it will take you minimum 2 days to change that seal, because it's not an O-ring. It's a gasket that's actually glued in place. So first you have to get the old one out, scrape out all the old glue, and you have to get it really well scraped out, and then you have to put a new gasket in with glue, and then you have to let it cure for 24 hours before you can use it. So we're talking a minimum of 2 days. So 10 minutes versus 2 days for something as simple as maintaining your vacuum leak tightness. Every fitting, every amphenol, every feed through on the TechSource Systems is built with European Hadron Collider grade vacuum fittings. In fact, the Fisher fittings that are on the inside here are actually used in the Hadron Collider. This system is not made with cheap components. It's made with the best components that you can get. And the reason is because production costs you a lot of money. So you get what you pay for. In other words, you will pay for the extra money that you would save by choosing one that has a lower capital cost, like the Parker 10. you would actually you'll actually pay that money that you saved just in lost production in the first year, but you're still not going to have the better unit. You're not going to have the removable shelves. You're not going to have the ability to clean it. You're not going to have the software that you don't, the PLC that you can modify and get into and not be locked to you. You're going to have free tech support. All the advantages I've just spoken about, you're going to have, right, every year after that. So the employees, the people who actually work on these machines, have to deal with the choice that you make up front. And the fact is that either system, they're good. They're both good systems. You're going to get good product out of both. I argue that the quality of the product, the fruit, is going to be better quality coming out of the TechSource unit by far, as far as coloration, shape, flavor, than it is coming out of the Parker system because of that closed cart. That higher temperature and higher pressure inside that cart causes problems. And we've seen product that comes out of those systems. Customers have seen the product that comes out of those systems, and it's just far better to get it from a TechSource unit. So, it's just like I heard a person put it like this once: cry on the first day, or cry, every day after, right? So, cry on the first day, pay the extra money up front, but then you get all the value that comes from that year after year after year. So I hope this helps. I've listed, I think, most of the features and benefits that you get from the TechSource unit. But look, you can just call me. You can reach out to me. We can set up a video con and talk anytime you want. This is my YouTube channel, right? So I have a little company called Suntor. It's the company so I do the contract sales for TechSource. But they actually still handle the entire sales transaction. I just do the legwork for them. I promote, I help them sell the machines. But I have an educational YouTube channel that talks about all kinds of things, like do you actually need refrigeration? How much do you need? Why do you have variable results between refrigeration? I have summit talks. I've got videos about all kinds of different things. In fact, like, for example, there's one here I show where, hey, my batch of apples failed. Why? And then I show the batch that worked and why that was. I talk about freeze drying recipes, just all kinds of stuff. It's a very good channel. It's just it's an educational channel that's all about freeze drying. So make sure you check that out. It's free, and let me know if there's some topic that you'd like me to cover. I'll put a link in the email so that you can find it easily. Okay, so I hope that this was helpful. I've never done it this way before, but hey, you're across the ocean, and I just thought it would be a really clear way for me to communicate with you. I'll send you documents and stuff on email that has supporting information so that you can have it. You don't have to take notes or anything like that. So, but feel free to reach out to me anytime you want. You have my email address. You have Matt's email address. You have my YouTube channel. You can reach out on the website. They're all perfectly valid ways to get a hold of us. And let me know if there's anything else. Like, for example, I can also help you with other ancillary equipment that you might need, like your walk-in freezers and that sort of stuff. Not necessarily who to buy it from, although I might be able to help you with that too. But more about how much power do I need for it? Like, what kind of capacity do I need on my freezers? What kind of temperatures do I need them to run at so that I don't have any problems with product foaming? I can help you with like, how do I dry slurries? Because if you're planning to do pastes and slurries or fruit juices and that kind of sort of stuff, you're going to find that there's some tricky issues that you need to work through, most of which revolve around foaming. And that's something that can be handled, and there's very specific ways that you handle that. So, for example, maybe you'll need to have grinders, perhaps things like that, packaging machinery. I don't know, I'm just a resource that you can connect with and use for, ask me whatever, and I'll just answer whatever I have for you. So I hope to hear from you again sometime soon, and hope I didn't waste my time making this video. Cheers. Talk to you later.